Here's one way unvaluable women were treated in history. This is the story of Magdalene Houses. Magdalene Houses were also known as Magdalene Asylums or Magdalene Laundries. They operated from the late 18th century to the 20th century, and they were mostly Roman Catholic-run institutions. They were peppered throughout the world, but the majority of them operated in Ireland. They were named after the temptress Mary Magdalene, and they were basically to house fallen women. And Magdalene laundries were named because they did a back-breaking amount of laundry and cleaning, with the hopes that you could eventually wash away your sins. Cleanliness is next to godliness and all that. Initially, the idea was women would voluntarily admit themselves, gain a respectable trade, and pay their debt to society. But over time, they just turned into straight-up prisons. Like, upon arriving there, women would be stripped of their names, they'd have to cut off all of their hair, and they are subjected to really inhumane working and living conditions. What's even more maddening is that there weren't prison sentences. Like, there's no rap sheet for sin. Some women were there for a few months, some were there for a decade, some were there for their entire lives. So there was no end in sight for the torture for most of these women. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, gee, that sounds terrible, but I'd never wind up in one of those. Well, Magdalene Houses were for fallen women. And what's a fallen woman? A slutty hoe. Anything that could potentially bring shame to your family. More specifically, young women who became pregnant outside of marriage, victims of rape, victims of incest, mentally handicapped women, teenagers and young girls who've lost the support of their family, devil women who were deemed overly flirtatious. A lot of pregnant women were transferred to homes for unwed mothers, where they'd give birth and live with their babies temporarily, but babies were often taken from their mothers and adopted to other families without their permission. I'm sure you're wondering what happened to the men involved, and don't worry, they were also held accountable and were punished just as harshly. Just kidding, nothing happened to the men. In 1993, on the grounds of an old convent, a mass grave was discovered containing the bodies of 155 women. This happened again in 2014, only this time the mass grave they discovered contained the bodies of 796 babies. This made front-page news and shed light on the inhumane and cruel nature of Magdalene Houses, and the President of Ireland issued an apology and set up a $60 million compensation fund for the victims. If you want to learn more, The Magdalene Sisters is a great movie about Magdalene Houses. Definitely check out Philomena as well. Thanks for watching, and remember, you're valuable.